Hello, everyone. Thank you for your interest in the most recent study on gender equality in the Swiss film industry. My name is Jela Skrlak, and I am a scientific collaborator for Eurimage and Diversity at the Swiss Federal Office of Culture. And in that function, I am responsible for gender statistics, and in particular also for the coordination of this new study that we commissioned from the company Interface and that you're going to hear about in a minute. The Federal Office of Culture has been very committed to gender equality since 2016. We have gender measures in our selective film funding, where we at equal quality give preference to projects by women. And second, we have also put in place several data collections that are the basis for an important part of this study. Those data collections have been done together with partners like regional and private film funding institutions, like film producers, film festivals, cinemas, and the national TV. And I would like to thank those partners and also everyone else who has contributed with additional data or expertise to this study. Namely the experts and the filmmakers who were willing to be interviewed or to fill out a survey, Swiss Films for their data, Swiss Image and the professional associations, the Federal Statistical Office, SWAN, the Swiss Women's Audiovisual Network, and last but not least, the Cine Suisse Working Group on Gender Equality, where actually the foundation work for this study has started. And of course, I would like to thank Interface and the study authors Franziska Müller, Vera Hertig, Christine Thorshow, and Oliver Prinzing for their great work. The study itself is very detailed and 115 pages long. So what I'm going to talk about today is only a very short summary, and I would suggest that we jump right into it. So the study has three parts. The first part is the quantitative analysis that aims at presenting the gender distribution in the Swiss film industry as a whole. So in film education, professional filmmaking, film funding, etc. So the entire industry. Then the in-depth analysis that is based on a survey and several interviews aims at identifying factors behind the gender distribution, so explaining why there might still be some inequalities. And the third part in the end consists of measures that could be taken to promote the gender equality in the future. So let's start with the first results of the quantitative analysis, and it's the results from the film schools. We see here that the average proportion of women graduating from Swiss film schools was 48% since 2008. So we do not have an inequality when it comes to film education. However, when we look at the professional associations, we see that the average proportion of female members was only 37%. And the picture is slightly different if we look at the younger members of those associations. So among the members that are up to 30 years old, women tend to be presented more often. And this is also the case for the association Pro Short, which is the association for short filmmakers. So it seems that in the younger generation, there is a more balanced gender distribution. The study also shows that entering the film industry is very difficult for both genders. So making a first film and then a second one and building a career is difficult for directors of male and female gender, and most directors only make one film and then no more. This is a little bit more often the case of women. And women also tend to be underrepresented in the group of directors who have made 5 or more films in their career. When we look at professional filmmaking and the share of women in key positions off screen, So those are the people that are behind the films we see on our cinema screens in Switzerland. We see that the share of women varies a lot according to the job category. We have a lot of women in editing, with over 50%. Then we have 35% of women in production, only a third of women in screenwriting and directing, and only 13% of women behind the camera. And what the study also finds is that if a woman is directing or writing the screenplay, the proportion of women in other leading positions increases. So women tend to work more often with women. If we look at the same data from a different perspective, looking at the age groups, we see that the gender distribution is more balanced among the younger filmmakers, except for the camera work, and camera actually still seems to be a very male profession. When it comes to the share of women on screen, so in the leading roles in feature films or protagonists in documentaries, we see that in feature films actually we have almost 50% of women in leading roles, whereas in documentaries we see twice as many men than women in protagonist roles. And what is especially interesting is that the proportion of women in the age group of 40 years and older is really much smaller than the men in those same age group. So there are a lot of leading roles for women under 40 years and very little roles for women older than 40 years. What is also very important, of course, in professional filmmaking are the salaries. And here the study has results on directing and screenwriting salaries, and those results show that women earn less on average than men per film. So there is a gender pay gap, and for screenwriters it is 17% that women earn less than men on average, and in the case of directing it is 8% that women earn less than men. When it comes to film funding, then we have good news. Well, good news means that the share of women submitting applications roughly corresponds to the share of women in funded projects. And this is good news because actually in the first gender study that was published in 2015, this was not the case. But now in the last 5 years, maybe also due to the measures that were implemented at our office and other film funding institutions, women have the same chances than men to get funded in Switzerland. And this is both true for production and also for project development. And in film funding, of course, expert committees are important, and we see that the proportion of women varies a lot among the different institutions. And it is exactly 50% in the case of the Federal Office of Culture, where 50% of male and females. However, what we also see in our committees at the Federal Office of Culture is that the younger generation tends to be poorly represented. We have only very little men and women born after 1980. So we are already talking about film success, and festivals are of course an important part of the film success. And what we see, or what the study finds, is that female directors receive fewer festival invitations on average, but they win more awards than their male counterparts. Films directed by women or by gender mixed teams account for 39% of festival awards worldwide. And if we look only at Swiss film festivals, we see that 45% of all the awards given out are for films with female or mixed gender direction. picture looks a little bit different when we have a look at theatrical releases and admissions, because here what we see is that women directed 27% of the Swiss films that were shown in Swiss cinemas in the last 5 years, but they accounted for only 20% of all the admissions. And this picture has been the same also in the previous periods that the study was looking at since 95. So it seems that films directed by women are more attractive in festivals and a little bit less successful in cinemas. But when it comes to measuring film success, also the Swiss Film Award is important. And here we see that women make up 27% of the nominees and 35% of the prize winners. And if we look only at the last 5 years, this percentage is even a bit higher, with 38% of the awards going to female filmmakers. So that was already the brief overview of the quantitative analysis that showed the situation of gender equality in the Swiss film industry. And let's move now to the explanatory factors that try to find reasons for that distribution. So the study team identified 4 main explanations, and it seems that gender-specific stereotypes still play a major role, whether they are conscious or unconscious. They shape the external and also the self-perception of the filmmakers. In general, men tend to be associated more with the attributes of successful people. They tend to be seen as strong and powerful and knowing what they want and going for it. Whereas with women, there is less confidence in them, less confidence that they will market their film, that they will assert themselves on a set, or that they can push a major film project through. And on the other hand, women also more often experience self-doubt, they more often want to justify themselves, and they lack courage and conviction more often than men. And there is, of course, a negative correlation between the external perception and the self-perception, because a lack of confidence from other people feeds self-doubt, and this in turn, of course, reinforces the negative external perception. There are also structural barriers in the film industry that apply both to male and female filmmakers. So there are factors within the industry that are difficult, and one is the body culture that it is difficult to access. So by body culture, the study team means informal networks or contacts or groups of people who tend to work with each other. Because if you work successfully on one film together, then maybe the same group of people wants to work again together on a second film. And as there are more men in the industry as a whole and fewer women in the key positions, it's harder for women to access this body culture. And also, because they still are more committed to family, women have less time to spend on networking, on informal networking activities. And second, what is noted as very difficult, both by men and women, and especially the younger generation, are the unsuitable working conditions or the unsuitable working culture. Both men and women say that it is really difficult to combine the film work with family, with having a family. And both say that it is quite a patriarchal working culture, so a masculine behavior that is still present on film sets or even at informal networking events. And women tend to be more intimidated by this, and as they also tend to spend more time on family commitments, they have greater difficulties in dealing with those already difficult working conditions for everyone. So what can be done about this? This is the question of the third part, and the study team gives us a couple of answers in the form of measures. So first of all, is there a need for measures to promote equality in Switzerland? And here a lot of a majority of the online survey respondents answered yes, measures are required, and not surprisingly, more women answered that measures are required than men. But what are those measures? The study team recommends the following. The study team recommends measures to dissolute the gender-specific stereotypes that are in the industry with three types of measures. First of all, by highlighting the equality stages, by conducting regular and standard data surveys. For example, as we are doing also at the Federal Office of Culture, we regularly publish data on gender equality. And here the study team recommends to expand those current data collections and to even add diversity indicators into those data surveys. And then, of course, once the data is available, you have to discuss them, you have to inform people about the results so that the findings can be shared. Then second, diversity needs to be made visible. And here the study team recommends to set up a central and common equality and diversity website. We have already many different websites on the topic in Switzerland. We have the one from Swan, and we have also our own website where you would find information on gender equality. But the study team recommends to have one common website for the entire Swiss film industry. Then they also recommend to raise awareness for gender equality and diversity among film school students. For example, especially training young women also for technical positions such as camera work, as we have seen that was very underrepresented. So this measure here is addressed to the film schools. And then a third measure to make diversity more visible is to hold competitions to promote diverse content. So for example, a screenplay competition where screenplays with a non-stereotypical female protagonist or a very diverse content would receive an award or could be funded especially, something like that. Then a third is it is really important to live diversity. And here the study team recommends to create an action plan for the entire Swiss film industry with goals for equality and diversity. For example, together when creating this action plan, the Swiss film industry could also create equality and diversity charters and have them signed by industry players, similar to what is already done with the film festivals, that they have all signed the Swan Gender Equality Charter. And then last but not least, on this slide, it is really important that equality and diversity are an integral component of film funding commissions as well. So those commissions, the diversity in those commissions should be increased. And there should also be some standards or criteria for evaluating equality and diversity in the applications that the committees receive. So those are the measures that can be used to dissolute the gender stereotypes. Now, when it comes to the structural barriers, first, the study team recommends to improve the access to the body system. This could be done, for example, by giving funding incentives for gender-balanced film teams. So if the film crews are balanced, they could receive a bonus in film funding, or there could be a point system that also measures how gender-balanced a film is. And another possibility is to offer coaching for the transition from student to professional. That it would be especially beneficial to young women, for example, through work shadowings or mentoring programs with experienced filmmakers. So in this way, they could, young filmmakers and especially young women could broaden their networks and gain experience and confidence. And last but not least, working conditions should be improved. Rules for working conditions should be put in place, and those rules should also be controlled. So this is referring to regulated working hours, but also to equal pay. So this is something that we at the Federal Office of Culture are already working at together with the professional associations, because equal pay is really important to us. Then what we are also already working on is in enhancing family-friendly film work by assuming the costs, for example, for a nanny that goes on the set. But this support should be expanded to other funding areas according to the study team. And then at the very end, it could be also possible to implement incentives for men and women to return to work following a family-induced break. So this was very quickly an overview of the study, and this chart summarizes the main findings. I'm not going to read them out again to you because you can have a look at it on the printed version of the study. And I would just like to thank you for your interest and invite you to visit our website for more information, or write me an email if you have questions. You see my address here on the slide. Thank you very much and have a nice day.